Hi, it's Jason from AVPro Edge. Thank you for checking out this video. Today we're going to talk about a new product that is exclusive to AVPro Edge that's going to help a lot of installers out there when it comes to sending audio to remote locations, especially if the audio is a Dante stream. Scenario number one is you want to be able to send audio to a remote location, but there's no amplifier for that location. Scenario number two is you want to put a pair of speakers or even maybe two pair of speakers in a remote location, but to that location, the only wiring, the only infrastructure is category cable. We'll take a look at these two different scenarios, and at the very end of the presentation, after looking at the product a little bit, we'll go ahead and do some hands-on demonstrations for you. The specific product we're going to talk about today is the AC-Dante-AMP-2 channel, and it really is what it sounds like it is. It's a Dante decoder with an amplifier built in. This will help you put speakers in remote locations where there's only category cable, or if there's already speakers in that location with category cable ran to it and there's no amplifier. Both of these situations can be done with the Dante amplifier. Now a little bit about AVPro Edge. We are well known for our long distance AV distribution systems with matrix switches, HDMI extenders, our MXNet AV over IP system, and our bullet train HDMI cables. This video is going to cover the AC-Dante-AMP-2 channel. This is a Dante decoding local speaker amplifier that also features analog line level outputs for connecting to any additional amplifiers or an audio distribution system. One of the reasons we designed this product is to give the installers options for a convenient way to send audio over an existing network. This amplifier will allow two Dante encoded streams throughout different areas of the installation. Another great use case is playing remote audio sources and be able to listen to them over a single category cable. With the amplifier built in, you can power some speakers or use the line level output for distributed audio. The Dante amplifier does have a small form factor, which will allow you to mount it in discrete locations, such as behind a display. And because the amplifier potentially is in the same room as the speakers, you don't need a rack of amplifiers and DSP in that room. Let's take a look at what's inside the box. First, you have the actual unit. Here's a picture of the front and the rear. There's also a power supply included, a few Phoenix connectors to make the audio connections, and some mounting hardware to mount the unit wherever you'd like. Now that we know what's in the box, let's take a look at some specifications. As mentioned before, the unit does support two Dante streams. If not a Dante encoded stream, you can send audio signals that are AES 67 compliant. It is a 25 watt ×2 amplifier that's 4 ohm stable, which will allow you to connect multiple pairs of speakers if necessary. You can mute the audio regardless if the amplifier is connected directly to speakers or if using the line level output. There's also a volume limit. This will help in cases where you have a room in the building and you don't want the audio to be any louder than an acceptable volume. There's also a volume lock, so if you are using the unit to power speakers or using the line level output, you can control the volume independently or together. And you can control the balance between the left and the right speakers. And a little bit about Dante in case you're not familiar. Dante is just a digital transport mechanism. It doesn't actually alter the audio in any way. So it is truly uncompressed and has great audio quality. The audio signal is simply packetized and sent to another location. And it supports 512 channels of audio over a single category cable up to 330 feet. Let's take a look at the front panel. The first thing you may notice is this tiny screen on the front of the unit. It is a little OLED screen and gives you some very valuable information, like the IP address of the unit. You can also see the speaker volume and the line level volume. To the right, there are two lights. One is a clipping indicator, which will let you know if the speakers are being overdriven, and of course a power light, which should always be on as long as the unit's plugged in. Let's take a look at the connections and the adjustments you can make to the levels. The first thing you might see is the RJ45 connection here. That's for the Dante stream. Next to that is also an RJ45 connection for LAN for control. If not using LAN for control, there is an RS-232 connection. Below that is the line level output, which is a cable that you can easily make in the field. We do also make a very low price solution if you want us to make the cable for you. Above that are some dip switches that we'll cover a little bit later. This is for configuration. Below that are your left and right speaker outputs. Above the speaker outputs, you have two potentiometers. One controls the line level output, one controls the speaker level output. And last but not least is a 24 volt power connection. There are separate volume controls for line level and speaker outputs, which are indicated by these two potentiometers. It is a 25 watt by 2 amplifier that's stable down to 4 ohms. And if you're not going to power speakers with this amplifier, again, there's a line level output, to get that signal to a bigger amplifier or through perhaps an audio distribution system. Let's look at how you can configure the amplifier based on the dip switches. One feature that's very handy is there's a key here for the dip switches and which position to put them in for your configuration. Flipping dip switch number 1 to the on position will give you a 3 dB boost on the output. Dip switch number 2, if turned on, will swap the left and right channels. This can be especially handy if the speakers were accidentally wired incorrectly. You may remember the OLED screen that we looked at before from the front of the unit. If you're in a light-sensitive area where the light from the OLED screen might be a little distracting, you can turn that off. Dip switch number 3 does come from the factory in the up position, meaning that the OLED display will dim after 3 minutes. If that dip switch is flipped to the down position, the OLED screen will always stay on, which actually might help if it's buried behind a display, the room is dark, and you're having a hard time finding it. Or if you just always want to be able to see the IP address and the levels of the speaker and or the output. And the last dip switch will give you some more control over the volume of the unit, and whether you want to be able to control the volume locally or remotely with a control system. If that dip switch is in the down position, that means you can only control the volume on the potentiometers on the back of the unit. For simple configuration, there is a web GUI that you can access through a web browser. Just make sure that your PC and the Dante amplifier are on the same network. Then type the IP address of the Dante amplifier into a browser and you can have full access. The web GUI will give you access to the speaker output settings, the line level output settings, IP and RS-232 control, and some diagnostics including the serial number, the ability to do firmware updates, and factory reset if needed. One use case might be setting the volume in the web GUI so it doesn't have to be controlled from a control system, which might make things a little bit easier for your installation. And of course, if needed, we can always send you the API. And just like the rest of our AVPro Edge products, the Dante amplifier is compatible with all of the major control systems. And as mentioned before, we can always send out the API if necessary. Let's take a look at a wiring diagram of a typical installation using the Dante amplifier. In this particular situation, this MXNet AV over IP switch is the heart of the system. Now, one thing to keep in mind, depending on the switch, it may be necessary to set up a VLAN both for the Dante audio streams and for Dante control. This is what happened in this particular system. Now for this system, once the VLANs were set up, you make simple category cable connections between the network switch and the Dante amplifier. For control, also over category cable, and any of the ports that you set up a VLAN for control. Your sources and your controller will also connect to these ports. If not controlling over LAN or IP, you can also control over RS-232. In this particular case, the line level output is being used to send audio to an audio distribution system, and then of course out to an amplifier and speakers, and you can connect directly a pair of speakers to the amplifier. This is nice because you can control these independently and potentially have multiple audio zones all running off of an amplifier that's getting signal from the Dante amplifier. Another great use case for the Dante amplifier in a classroom or boardroom or maybe a huddle room where there's a Dante capable microphone. This works well for Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Skype, and plenty of others. You could use a laptop as an audio source and hear the audio through the Dante system while looking at the video on the display. This is a screenshot of the Dante controller, which can be downloaded free from the Audinate website. In this particular example, there's a MacBook being used as a source, sending signal over to the Dante amplifier. Now, as mentioned before, the Dante amplifier can support 2 audio streams simultaneously. This can be very helpful, for example, in a situation where maybe there's a PA system involved and the signal is only mono. This will allow for multiple streams on multiple pair of speakers. You could also have one pair of speakers connected to the speaker outputs for one of the audio streams and send the other audio stream to a distributed audio system or another amplifier. And just like all of our other AVPro products, the Dante amplifier comes with a 10-year no BS warranty. And as the integrator, you know that you put in a piece of equipment that is built and designed to last. This should give you and your customer peace of mind. So that's it for the presentation. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, you can always visit us at avproedge.com. If you have any questions that you'd like to send over email, you can send those at info@avproedge.com, or you can always give us a call at 605-274-6055. Now let's take a look at a hands-on demonstration. In this demonstration, we're going to take a look at how easy it is to set up the Dante 2-channel amplifier to a pair of speakers that are in a remote location, and the only infrastructure to that location is category cable. This example is a pretty straightforward setup. The source is a Blu-ray player that we're using as a CD player, but of course this could be any analog audio source. At the heart of the system is an AVPro Edge MXNet AV over IP network switch, and a 2-channel Dante encoder. And over here we have a pair of bookshelf speakers that are in a remote location. This of course could be any pair of speakers, whether they're in ceiling, bookshelf, or even towers. You'll also see the Dante 2-channel amplifier, which is powering the 2 speakers. The Dante encoder is connected to the AV over IP switch with a category cable. The second category cable you see here is the category cable that's ran all the way over to that remote location where those speakers are. The category cable is connected directly to the 2-channel Dante amplifier. The Dante amplifier is connected directly to the pair of speakers with speaker wire. Next, we'll go ahead and put in a CD and press play. With a fairly simple setup like this with only one encoder and decoder, you should start to hear music right away. And in this particular example, be sure you're making the volume adjustment on the speaker level output because the speakers are connected directly to the amplifier. Once the content's playing, go ahead and set the speakers to an appropriate volume level. As you're making adjustments to the speaker level output, watch the OLED screen on the front of the amplifier and you'll see the levels are changing. And that's how easy it is to connect the Dante 2-channel amplifier to a pair of speakers in a remote location where there's only a piece of category cable in that location. Let's take a look at another scenario, except this time we're going to use the line level output on the amplifier. The next example we'll take a look at is almost exactly the same as before, except in this situation, there's a local amplifier in the same zone as the speakers. Unlike in the last example, where the speakers are connected directly to the speaker terminals on the amplifier, this time we're using the line level output instead. That's connected to another set of RCA cables, which are then connected to the input on this amplifier. In the last example, the speakers were connected directly to the amplifier, so we were making the level adjustments on the speaker output. This time, since we're using the RCA outputs, go ahead and make that adjustment to the line level output. And just like before, we can see the level change on the front panel. This time we're just watching the L for line level output. Once the levels are set on the Dante amplifier, go ahead and turn up volume on the local amplifier. And as you can hear, now we have these speakers playing from a local amplifier in a location that's completely separate from the rest of the rack, with only a single piece of category cable ran to the remote location. The last scenario that we'll look at today really shows you how versatile the Dante 2-channel amplifier is. All over a single category cable, we're now able to power 2 pair of speakers. One off the Dante amplifier directly, and 1 pair off of the 2-channel amplifier we have here using the line level output. Thanks for checking out the video on the Dante 2-channel amplifier. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a call at 605-274-6055. You can always visit the website at avproedge.com. And if you have any specific questions, feel free to send us an email at info@avproedge.com.